Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and I have just finished watching the Mexican Grand Prix. It has literally just finished and I'm diving right into this one. There were plenty of talking points, but I will say the first 10 laps or so of this Grand Prix were incredible. The rest of it was okay. There was stuff going on at least. It wasn't amazing, but at least we had some battles on track. We'll get to them. This was a good Grand Prix, but the start of it was incredible. Carlos Sainz, I honestly think replacing him with Lewis Hamilton in 2025 is one of the biggest downgrades you could possibly do on the grid. Definitely the biggest downgrade we'll see in 2025. Carlos Sainz is a brilliant driver, and he's proving it this year again with essentially a supporting role for Ferrari. He's definitely the number two, or at least 1.5. Like Charles Leclerc is the golden boy. But Carlos Sainz is brilliant. He does a decent job, scores for team points, and that's the reason Ferrari are challenging in the Constructors this year, because both drivers are very, very good. Neither of them are in the title fight. I mean, Leclerc has been an outsider to it for quite a while now, but he's not really in the title fight. Sainz definitely isn't, but they've still done a brilliant job to bring Ferrari into the Constructors talk, because they get results. Sainz is a very solid driver. He was very quick here. On pole, on merit. He was quick during the race, really untroubled apart from the start. It was a fantastic drive all round. The first Ferrari win in Mexico since 1990, which Alan Prost won. It's been a long time coming for them, but then Mexico has been off the calendar for a long time. It came back in 2015 after, I think, a 20-year... No, it wouldn't be 20 years, would it? No, it would be. 20-year absence or so. So Ferrari, I think I said in the prediction video, it's only their third ever win in Mexico, which is pretty crazy to think about when you think about how long Ferrari have been around. Everything else in this race, the start was pretty hectic. I think Verstappen and Sainz getting into it, and Sainz really coming out on top. It was pretty close stuff. It was good driving. Sainz did well to get the lead, and honestly, at that point, no one touched him. Verstappen, though, there were mistakes in this one. And we've seen it from Verstappen before when he loses his cool. Now, I think that's definitely what happened here. Or, my other theory is, there's something wrong with the Red Bull, and he was just doing anything he could to preserve as many points as possible. Because he had his issues on Friday, was it second practice he had a problem? And they had to switch to an older engine unit. I'm just wondering, was that lacking in horsepower? Was there something else wrong with it? Because Verstappen is quick. We know he's quick. But even after the 20-second penalty, he didn't make any progress. He was well behind the Mercedes pair. He did finish ahead of Piastri at least, which is something from this weekend, which was not a good one for Red Bull. I do wonder if there was something wrong with the Red Bull. Maybe that's why he was extra defensive. But they were bad moves. I think the move on Carlos Sainz was out of order. He did squeeze him out. And then he did it again on Lando Norris a lap later. And then whatever the hell was going on with that move in the second sector, it was dodgy. And honestly, he's probably lucky to get away with just a 20-second penalty. I think that's reasonable. Maybe the first one should have been a 5-second penalty. But it basically works out the same. Even without those penalties, Red Bull were well off the pace this race. So it's not the end of the world. And it's a shame because in qualifying he was quick. So the car works. It's just they couldn't get it to work in the race for some reason. And that's why I think maybe there was an issue. Maybe it was just down on power. Maybe it has an older unit. It's done a lot of miles. They probably would never tell us. But it was something strange about Verstappen's performance in this race. Sergio Perez this weekend, it's a sign of things to come, I think, that everyone is talking about Liam Lawson. Or even Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda's getting a Red Bull test at the end of the year, I think. And rightfully so. The last few races have not been great for Yuki Tsunoda. This weekend he's crashed twice. But I do think he is a very good driver. And if you look at his performances earlier in the year, he was fantastic. He's very capable and he could do well in a Red Bull. I think he'd do better than Sergio Perez is doing because Sergio Perez isn't really doing anything at the moment. Out in Q1 again, And in the race, he was just bad. He was struggling to make progress. He got a penalty for not starting in his pit box, I think, or something, or grid slot, whatever. And then it's just that puts him in a position where stuff like what happens to him happens. He gets nudged about. He gets his car damaged. Damage to the floor, damage to the side pods. Maybe that had a big aerodynamic effect on the car, but he just wasn't making any progress. He was at the back of the field of this race the entire time. Not good enough from a Red Bull. He should not be that far off McLaren. Not that far off McLaren, but also Max Verstappen. It is really, really poor. And his home race as well is kind of depressing. But I do think we are now pretty much at the end of Sergio Perez's career. I was thinking they'd probably leave it till the end of the season. I still think that, but there is a chance they might sling him before the last few races. We've got Brazil next week, so I think we'll see Perez there. But then after that, I think he'll be gone. Or if not, definitely the end of the season. I don't think we'll see Sergio Perez in 2025. Not in a driving role. Maybe Red Bull will keep him around as either like a driver mentor or reserve driver. There's plenty of roles he could have. He's very experienced, but he's just not performing on track right now. And Red Bull need him to perform because they are losing for Constructors' title this year. Ferrari and McLaren are leaving them behind. Max Verstappen is the only one scoring decent points for the team, and even he has struggled in the last 10 races or so. As I said, he hasn't run since Spain. That was a long time ago. When you think back to last year when he won, what was it, 21 races? I can't even remember how many races it was. It was so many. But this year, it's been tougher. The gap between the top teams is much closer. And it has been a lot harder for Verstappen. He's still driving well. He's still leading the championship. He had a brilliant start to the year. Was it 7 wins in the first 11 races? Those were vital because since then, it's been rough going. But he is still scoring points. Norris has closed the gap nicely. That late move on Leclerc, brilliant. Good car control from Leclerc, but those mistakes happen to him far too often. But the gap between Norris and Verstappen is still around 40 points. It's still a long shot for Norris to win. He can do it. And if Verstappen's going to have issues with his power unit and might get some penalties or maybe even suffer a mechanical failure, then that fight is going to be very, very close. And it is good to see that. But Norris needs to win races. That's the only thing he's not doing. He's taken 3 wins this year. He has a car that could take 5 or 6. And now he needs to do that. That's the only thing really lacking from him right now. He's in a title fight. He needs to take the wins. He couldn't catch Sainz. It was too late in the race once he got past Leclerc. But it was still a good performance to get back up to second. He's finished higher than he started. Really, that's as good as it was going to get with Sainz being 10 seconds ahead once he got past Leclerc. So it was a good result for McLaren. Piastri, a little bit disappointing. He got knocked out in Q1 and he only got middling points. He couldn't catch Magnussen in a Haas, who I'll get to in a minute because they were brilliant. So I think McLaren will be a little bit disappointed with the result. But overall, I think Ferrari and McLaren will be fairly pleased. Red Bull, incredibly depressed. Mercedes, kind of as expected, definitely the weakest of the top teams. It's interesting that Hamilton couldn't get past Russell, who was in an older spec car with a broken front wing. It took him a long time, but he did finally do it. But I don't think it's a good sign that it took him that long. And maybe it's an issue of he had more downforce and was therefore slow on the straights. And to be honest, the only place to pass in Mexico is really the first corner after the long straight on DRS, which is a little bit disappointing. But we saw some action in the second chicane. Lawson and Perez got into it. I think Stroll and Perez as well. A few others. Hamilton and Russell were swapping. Well, not swapping, but they were getting pretty close in that chicane. So we got some good action on track. It was a fine performance for Mercedes. Haas were absolutely brilliant. Magnussen, a fantastic drive to 7th place. I said he'd score points, and he did. It was a great drive from him. He was keeping up with the Mercedes at the start of the race. He dropped back eventually, but it was still a really good job from Haas. 7th and 9th, double points finish. Drivers really untroubled in this one, which everyone else was sort of having their issues here and there. Brilliant drive, very, very impressive. Good points for Haas as well. Piastri was around there, we've already talked about him. I think Gasly finished 10th. Pretty anonymous from Alpine, but at least they score a point, which they don't think they've done for a while. RB, Liam Lawson showed some good stuff in this race. He has been impressive. Couldn't keep it in the points. Late contact with Colapinto didn't help his cause. And as for Tsunoda, he's definitely quick, but mistake in qualifying. The first corner crash was not his fault. It's just one of those things. Racing incident. It was a good start, at least. And I think he would have been a top 10 runner. But it just, these things don't work out. Stake were horrible as usual. Don't think we really saw that much of them. Disappointing for Williams. Albon getting caught up in that first corner crash as well. Colapinto, again, showing some really decent talent. I think it's actually a problem for Williams. Absolute coup to get Carlos Sainz Jr. and partner him with Alexander Albon, who's been brilliant. But you've now also got Franco Colapinto, who is really, really good, and you've got nowhere for him to go. It's a little bit of a shame. The Argentine driver has been fantastic since he stepped up and deserves a seat in Formula 1, and he's proven he deserves a seat in Formula 1. Unfortunately, there just isn't a seat available for him, which kind of sucks. But I think it's actually a nice problem for Williams to have, that they have all these decent drivers around them, despite the fact they're still a backmarker team, really. Ocon, I don't think we really saw much of him. Aston Martin were dreadful. Fernando Alonso's 400th race, and he ends it on lap 12 or something, I can't remember. Broken down, out of the race. Nothing really impressive about this weekend for Aston Martin at all. I think that's everyone. I don't know. As I said, it was an okay race. There were some good battles, some interesting strategies, but the gaps between the cars were getting very, very big by the end. The top three, before Leclerc pitted, were 30 seconds ahead of Russell and Hamilton, who were another 10 seconds ahead of Verstappen, who was 10 seconds ahead of Magnussen. The gaps were pretty big. So by the end of the race, apart from the Russell-Hamilton battle and Norris catching Leclerc, there wasn't really too much going on. But it was still entertaining enough. And it needs to be with so many Grand Prix this year. A run of 3 with Texas, Mexico and Brazil. I'm looking forward to the Brazilian Grand Prix because I love Interlagos. But it's still a lot of Grand Prix in one big chunk right at the end of the season. There's been some interesting talk about Mexico wanting to extend its stay in Formula 1 regardless of Sergio Perez being there or not. If we're going to lose a track, and by crikey we need to, I would be fairly okay with losing Mexico. It's an alright track, but it's not amazing. It's one of those tracks where I don't think about it for the rest of the year. And then when it comes up, it's like, oh yeah, Mexico, cool. And then we'll get to next week and I'll completely forget about it again. So, I mean, with the calendar as stacked as it is, and they want to add even more Grand Prix in places like Rwanda, and I'm sure there's other Middle East countries that would like Grand Prix, and, we've got to squeeze a few more from America. There's probably a few that are going to lose their slot, and I can see Mexico getting shouldered again. Maybe we'll give it another 20 years and come back to it. But otherwise, it was a good Grand Prix. I was fairly entertained, and really, that's all you can ask for. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you enjoy this one? What did you think of Max Verstappen? What about the title fight? Anything you want to talk about, leave it in the comments. Thank you very, very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more motorsport content, which will be coming out for the foreseeable future. I have nothing else to do, and it's honestly, I love making videos, so why not? Thank you. I don't know why I'm rambling. Have a good one.